Hey, curious cats, my name is Sahara. Welcome to that true crime channel. Let's get into it. For tonight's case, we're going back to the USA. Yeah, we're gonna go there a lot. Nathan Leopold was born in Chicago on November 19th, 1904, from German Jewish parents who had emigrated to the USA. His family is quite wealthy. His father had inherited a shipping company from his own father. I didn't find much information about his mother, but apparently Nathan was being taken care of by a governess, a sort of teacher slash nanny. She's the one who would take care of him, his education, his school, everything. Nathan is said to be intellectually precocious. He's extremely smart. He speaks different languages from a very young age, but he has problems socializing with other kids. He goes to Harvard private school and he graduates with honors, after which he will go to the University of Chicago where he will meet Richard Loeb. Richard Loeb was also born in Chicago on the 11th of June, 1905, so he's 1 year younger than Leopold. Also in a wealthy Jewish family, his father was a successful lawyer who became the vice president of Sears. Loeb is just as brilliant as Leopold. He's accepted at the University of Chicago when he's only 14 years old. He also has a governess, and it is said that she contributed a lot into him becoming a brilliant student. They have a lot in common. They both come from money, they're Jewish, they live in the same neighborhood in Kenwood, Chicago's South Side. They go to the same university, they're highly intelligent, but they also have major differences in their personalities. Leopold is very introverted, he's a bit of an obnoxious know it all. When Leb is very charismatic, he's very popular, he's very handsome, very attractive. They meet in the summer of 1920, they're kindred spirits, they quickly become friends. They hang out together a lot and soon they become inseparable. Leopold is fascinated with Leb, he's infatuated, and the more time they spend together, the more Leopold is obsessed with Leb. And Leb is perfectly aware of it, he will take advantage of it. Using the promise of sexual favors, he will convince Leopold to start a criminal life. It begins with stealing cars, setting fires, smashing storefront windows. Apparently, every time they would commit a crime, Leb would allow Leopold to insert his penis inside him as a reward. That's actually a quote from the trial testimonies. Must have been a pretty colorful trial. And even though from the outside it looks like it's Leopold who has the darker side, it's actually Leb who is the evil mastermind. There's a saying that goes, pretty faces hide devilish minds. And it couldn't be more accurate in this case. Leb is the one who comes up with the plan to commit the perfect crime. If you're not familiar with German philosopher Nietzsche's Superman or superhuman concept, here it is. A superhuman or superman or beyond man is someone who would be capable of freeing himself from social, religious, and traditional influences. He would make up his own values, his own rules, because he is superior and he's not interested in the comfort of a meaningless life. Nietzsche talks about this concept in the book Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I think I'm saying that right. If you want to know more about the philosophy of the superhuman, you should read the book, because my trying to sum it up in 2 sentences is not doing it any justice at all. It's just to give you a little idea. Because you need to know this to understand that our devil duo knows about Nietzsche's work, and they completely misunderstand this philosophical concept. They think it means that a very small handful of people is greatly superior, so much so that they can rise above the laws of common men. Leopold even wrote in a letter talking about the superhuman that he is not reliable for anything he may do. So they completely misunderstand the superhuman concept, and they come to the conclusion that one way for them to show the world that they are intellectually superior is to commit the perfect crime. They got away with arson, they got away with petty theft, they got away with everything they did to that point, but that's not satisfying enough. It's almost belittling, too common, if you will. And Lev himself says that he identifies with the uncommonness of murder. And in order to get the media attention nationwide and even worldwide, they think they should do something extremely horrific. It has to be murder. And what more horrific and tragic than the killing of an innocent child? They don't even have a victim yet, and they start planning the entire thing. Their level of preparation is pretty astounding, especially considering their very young age. They spend months organizing everything. They choose a murder weapon, they find a location to dispose of the body, they think about asking for a ransom. And they're rich, they don't need the money. They just want the whole city living in the fear and the suspense of Where's that kid? What's gonna happen to him or her? And who's behind this? They even rent a car under the false names Lewis Mason and Morton Ballard. They know their family cars could trace back to them, so they use a fake identity and they rent a car. In their scheming, they don't consider the possibility of getting caught for a second. And that can simply be explained by the fact that they never got caught for any of the other small crimes that they committed so far. They got arrogant and cocky, and let's face it, they were arrogant and cocky long before they became criminals. And this time, they're getting ready for this. They work on every single detail of this future murder. They're confident. They know exactly what they must do, when they must do it, how they must do it. If only they had put that much energy and effort into trying to make the world a better place. So sad. On the afternoon of May 21st, 1924, Leopold and Loeb are driving around in that rented car looking for a potential victim. They're literally driving around trying to find a child to kidnap and kill, like they're out shopping. And what do you think is the best location to kidnap a child? Time's up. A school. Genius. So that's where they decided to go. They're driving around in the area of Harvard Middle School, where they studied themselves, and they come across one of Leb's cousins. He lives in the same area as Leopold and Leb, so they see him walking home from school and they stop and they decide that, okay, it's gonna be him. They're thinking they should offer him a ride home so they can lure him in the car. And when they stop, Bobby Franks, 10 years old, the victim, recognizes his cousin, Nathan Leb. Richard Leb. So Richard asks his cousin to get inside the car, but at first Bobby's like, no, it's okay, I can walk. But his cousin insists and he says he wants to talk to him about tennis because Bobby plays tennis. So the boy gets in the front seat next to Leopold, who is driving, and his cousin is in the back seat. Maybe that's why he refused to get inside the car, because he probably thought it was weird that his cousin was in the back seat. I mean, that looks odd, right? Two friends driving around together and someone is in the back seat and someone is driving at the front. It's just suspicious. I think Bobby could sense that something was off. But it was his cousin after all, so he got in. And as soon as he did, his cousin from behind, he stabbed him in the face with a chisel. It took a few blows for Bobby to stop fighting and to become unconscious. And for some time, he was still alive. They stuffed a gag in his mouth, they undressed him, and they put a blanket over him. They let him bleed to death while they were driving off to the burial site. On their way, they stopped for hot dogs and a root beer. Because, killing someone, it builds up an appetite. You need fuel for that gray matter. They pour acid on his face so the police would have a hard time recognizing his features and identifying him. And they ditched the body in a swamp on 118th Street under the Pennsylvania Railroad tracks. They sent a ransom letter to Bobby's father, a letter written with a typewriter that they stole at the University of Michigan. They know it will be impossible to trace that letter back to them. The typewriter comes from a university. So many people have used it. They also dispose of the typewriter in the same area, along with the chisel. They burn Bobby's clothes, along with the blanket he was in because it was covered in blood. After they get back to their neighborhood, they call the Franks family, who is already worried sick that their boy has not come home from school yet. On the phone, they tell them that their son has indeed been kidnapped and they want a ransom. The next morning, the parents receive a letter, and here it is. I hope the quality is good enough. Basically, they're reassuring the parents of the boy's well-being, and they give their instructions for the ransom, how much they want, where the money should be put, and they even specify they want old bills of 20s and 50s. I'll give you some time to read the letter. And as you can see, this letter is quite generic. They don't mention the name of Bobby or the Franks family name. It's that letter they wrote long before they even knew who they were going to kidnap. Something the boys did not plan was that the body would be found so soon. It was found the very next day at 9:30 a.m., many hours before they got to collect the ransom. Their plan was indeed to collect the ransom the day after the murder, sometime in the evening. That's what they said in the letter. I couldn't find information about that, but I'm pretty sure they never intended to tell anybody where the body was. Anyway, the body was found by an immigrant who was walking along the railroad tracks and immediately called the police. Police don't realize whose body it is until around 5:30 that same day. Since Bobby was missing, they called his family to try and identify the body in case it was their missing son, and it was. At first, the examination of the body cannot determine a cause of death. The doctors can only tell he didn't drown, because he was found in a swamp. They find the blows from the chisel, but they don't know they were caused by a chisel, and they seem superficial. They probably didn't think that Bobby could have bled out from what to them appeared to be small wounds. On the crime scene, investigators find glasses that seem like they would fit the boy, but Bobby's father says his son never wore glasses. And luckily enough, these glasses are quite unique. Their hinges are very unusual. Detectives are able to find the maker of these glasses, Almer & Co., and this optician tells them they only made 3 pairs like these. One belongs to a woman who is immediately ruled out as a suspect. Another belongs to a man who's been traveling to Europe for the last few months. And the last one belongs to Nathan Leopold. He's taken to the police station, and when he is asked if he's ever been to that location where the body was found, he immediately says, "Yes, I go there bird watching. I've been there 50 times." That's quite precise, 50 times. Suspicious. He goes on to explaining that he's interested in ornithology, which is actually true. He even published 3 papers in the Ornithology American paper. He answers no to the question, "Are these your glasses?" He says they're probably home. But if they're not, he says that it can easily be explained by the fact that he goes to that location quite often. And last he remembers, he was there a couple days before the murder. He's very nonchalant during his interrogation. He exudes overconfidence and even arrogance. But detectives explain it by his privileged upbringing. They don't think he can be behind this. He's rich, he doesn't need the money, he wouldn't need to do that. Only poor people are criminals. Or so they think. Of course, he's asked where he was the night of the murder. He says he took his father's car and he went on a double date with his friend Leb. And Leb, of course, will confirm the alibi. When the boys are asked if they own a typewriter, Leb says he owns one, but it doesn't match the ransom letter. They were smart enough to get a different typewriter just to show police that the ransom letter can trace back to them. After their interrogation, they go free. But there is a chain of evidence that will lead police to the conclusion that it has to be Leb and Leopold. It starts with the glasses belonging to Leopold. Then the Leb family chauffeur is interrogated. And what he thinks will help the boys' alibi is actually what's going to lead police to arrest them. The chauffeur says the family car was in a garage that night to be repaired, so they couldn't have been at that ditch, he says. So how did they go on their double date? And the last piece of the puzzle, the most conclusive piece of evidence, is the typewriter that was found in a nearby lake. The police found a letter that was at Leopold's house, and it was written with that same typewriter. It matched the ransom letter. Busted. To sum up, Leopold's glasses, Leopold's paper written with the same typewriter as the ransom letter, and the alibi that brings up the question, how did you go on your double date? That's all it took detectives to arrest them for the murder of Bobby Franks. The boys confess immediately, and they even brag about the murder. They gladly accept interviews with journalists. They're happy with themselves, happy they're getting so much attention. At some point, they're interrogated separately and they turn on each other. Leopold says Leb is the mastermind, Leb says Leopold is the mastermind. And like in the Pistorius case, if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out this video. They will get the best lawyer they can find, Clarence Darrow. His nickname is the attorney for the damned. And the trio looks almost funny. You have Leopold, very intense, very dark character, Leb, sleek and well-groomed, and Darrow, who looks like a complete mess, a hobbit, an elf, and a wizard. Darrow takes the case of Leopold and Leb at the end of his career. In fact, he even announces that he's gonna retire after this one. And this lawyer is notorious because he's amazing at his job, he's fierce, he's eloquent, he's charismatic, and even seductive, some people say. He won every case he took except his first one, and he never got over it. I think it sort of shaped the kind of lawyer he would become. The families of Leb and Leopold beg him to avoid the death penalty. And to Darrow, this case, dubbed the crime of the century, is the perfect occasion to advocate against the death penalty. He doesn't believe in it. His goal is to get them life imprisonment. His philosophy is hate the sin, not the sinner. He believes in nurture over nature in the motivations behind a crime, meaning that he doesn't believe that people are born killers or criminals. They become criminals because of poverty or their upbringing or whatever happened in their lives. In the case of the murder of Bobby Franks, Darrow points out that the killers have deep emotional issues. He even says they're sick, they have sick minds, and that's what led them to killing. Apparently, Leopold was sexually abused by his governess when he was 12 years old. And Loeb, as a punishment, would often be locked up in a sort of cellar by his governess, and he would stay there for hours sometimes. And Darrow also points out the fact that they were pretty much brought up by a governess, therefore, with a lack of maternal and even parental affection and love and care. He also says that the youth of the 20s suffers from overindulgence over education. They have a life that leaves them nothing to desire. They have no goal to attain, no obstacles to overcome. Everything comes easy. So Darrow believes their upbringing should call for mercy. Money isn't everything. Money doesn't make you happy. Well, it would surely make me happy. Happier. Bringing this sort of Freudian aspect in a trial was sort of revolutionary at the time. Even the public is surprised. They ask themselves, what about my own kids? What about me? What about my own trauma, my childhood? Could it lead me one day to do something as terrible as this? Because that's basically what the lawyer is saying. Anyone is capable of murder. Just got people thinking. Darrow made the request to have the case decided by a judge, not a jury, and he knows exactly what he's doing. He actually took a sort of survey in the streets of Chicago to get a feel of the public's opinion on the matter. 60% want them to hang. At least with only one person to convince, it would be easier to try and avoid the death penalty. And to everybody's surprise, he pleads guilty. Again, at the time, it's revolutionary. A lawyer pleading guilty, claiming his clients were sick, but most importantly, bringing to light the reasons behind a crime. A chain of events that can explain, not justify, but explain why they did what they did. And as clever as he was, Darrow says in court that killing them would be as barbaric as them killing that boy. He reminds the judge that the youngest man to have been hanged was 23 years old at the time, and these boys would be the youngest if they were sentenced to death. They would be 20 and 21 years old. That lawyer gets the judge so emotional he makes him cry. Even Loeb cries at some point during the trial. The prosecution, represented by Robert Crowe, well, first of all, big surprise, they expected a not guilty plea for reason of insanity. But Mr. Crowe wants them to be found guilty and he wants the death penalty. He wants to show their perverted minds, young men who feel no remorse for what they did, who bragged about their horrific crime and feel no sense of guilt whatsoever. Their own families are shocked that their sons would be capable of such a thing. During the trial, you even see them laughing and smirking, and that helps the prosecution into demonstrating their evil characters. The motive was not only the thrill, it was also sex. The autopsy revealed that the boy had been raped. Crowe wants the judge to focus on the monstrosity of the crime. And he says what counts is their guilt, what they did, not the reason that led them to kill. It shouldn't matter, in his opinion. I think I agree. What do you think? The only disputed fact is who struck the fatal blows. The reenactment is inconclusive. Leopold says Loeb was behind all the plotting and he's the one who killed Bobby as soon as he got in the car. But Loeb says it was Leopold because he was driving, so it couldn't have been him. But both agree on one thing. They killed for the thrill. Loeb admitted to financing the job. He paid for every expense linked to the murder, from the renting of the car to the typewriter and the after murder dinner. Want some? No, there's blood on it. When I was reading the transcripts of the police interviews, I noticed that Leopold was calling Loeb babe. Considering it was the 20s, I was really surprised that they would be openly gay. Anyway, there is a lot at stake in this case. The judge feels he has a huge responsibility, and you can see he's torn. Whatever he decides, he knows he's going to be criticized. But he comes to a decision. Guilty. After all, they pleaded guilty, and he agrees they are guilty. But he does sentence them to life in prison. He says he doesn't care about their motive or their personalities or the scientific evidence that these boys are sick, as the experts claimed, or that they had trauma in their childhood that caused them to, I don't know, lose their minds. He doesn't want them to die, mostly because they're very young. The public is quite disappointed. Everybody believes that they didn't get the death penalty, not because Darrow is a terrific lawyer, but because they come from money. So Leopold and Loeb are sentenced to life in prison plus 99 years for the kidnapping. They will be eligible for parole after 20 years. Richard Loeb is sent to Stateville Penitentiary, where he will die in 1936. He was attacked by a fellow inmate, James Day, in the showers with a razor. James claimed that Loeb had tried to sexually assault him, but Leopold, who knows Loeb very well, will later say that he didn't believe it. What he really thinks happened was James Day made sexual advances to Loeb. Loeb refused, the guy got angry and killed him. Leopold was sent to the same prison, and later he started to feel remorse. He realized the seriousness of his actions and the pain he caused. He started praying and teaching to fellow inmates. He also learned more languages. In total, he was fluent in 28 languages. Such a waste of gray matter. While he was in prison, Leopold wrote a book titled Life Plus 99 Years. Here's what he said in his book about Richard Loeb. You just couldn't figure the fellow out. Those quick alternations of mood, those sudden changes of mind. But then there was nothing compared to the real, fundamental contradiction in his character. Everybody went for the guy, and rightly so. There wasn't a sunnier, pleasanter, more likable fellow in the world. His charm was magnetic. Maybe mesmeric is the better word. He could charm anybody he had a mind to. Lots of people who thought the world of him would be surprised to know his real thoughts about them. He looked down on nearly everybody, but they never knew it. And he was at home with everybody. College presidents or hobos, it was all the same to Dick. He seemed to have the inborn knack of making friends, of winning everyone's affection. I tried deliberately to copy his mannerisms, to be consciously charming. I couldn't come close. And he could be generous to a fault. But then there was that other side to him. In the crime, for instance, he didn't have a single scruple of any kind. He wasn't immoral, he was just plain amoral. Unmoral, that is. Right and wrong did not exist. He'd do anything, and it was all a game to him. And about his punishment, he wrote, I've spent 32 years here. Is that sufficient punishment for what I did? I don't know the answer to that because I don't know how to measure punishment. I know that I have forfeited any chance of amounting to anything. I forfeited a chance for a family. Whether this is sufficient, I don't know. Nathan Leopold was released from prison at the age of 58. He moved to Puerto Rico, where he got married. He got a job as an assistant in an X-ray lab. And at the same time, he was teaching mathematics at the University of Puerto Rico. He died at the age of 66 from complications due to his diabetes. And that concludes the case of the murder of Bobby Franks, aka the crime of the century, aka the Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb case. Oh, this one was just horrendous. I mean, all of them are, but this one, I don't know, just got me thinking. Killing for the thrill. Random item review, just a couple minutes. I think that's checkmate, right? I'm trying to be funny and I'm really not funny. The random item of the day is this transportable chessboard. I think if I talk like that, you can hear me. But if I talk like that, you can hear me. I watched The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, and I don't know how to play chess, so that's why I got this. I think an app would be better, 2020, like obviously, but I don't know, it just looks so cute, and it was very inexpensive. I'm not gonna give the price because I bought that for my sister, so I don't want her to know, but I'll leave a link, so she'll probably find out. Anyway, play chess, get smart. Guys, that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching till the end. As usual, like, subscribe, comment, make suggestions, and I'll see you soon. Bye.